Where on earth did you get this much cash? That was the question that shattered the air like glass the moment Karen, yes, her actual name, saw the stack of bills in James Miller's hand. But let's rewind. James had just walked into Global City Bank, calm and collected, wearing black jeans, a tee, and a jacket. He nodded politely as he stepped into the business account section and said, "Good afternoon. I'd like to make a deposit." But the woman at the desk, a white teller with judgment already in her eyes, looked him over from head to toe and snapped, "Oh, this is for business clientele. The regular line is out there." James didn't flinch. "I'm in the right spot. I just left the studio. Anyways, I need to make a deposit." He took a seat, opened his bag, and calmly handed over a bundle of cash. And that's when she hit him with the question, "Where on earth did you get this much cash?" James responded without hesitation, "From my business." But Karen wasn't having it. She narrowed her eyes. "Look, before we go any further, I need to see some ID." Funny, because the last guy, a white man in a suit, walked in and out with no questions. Still, James obliged. He pulled out his wallet and handed her his driver's license. Karen looked at the ID, frowned, and looked up at James. "Is this really you?" James met her eyes and answered, "Yes, it's really me." She stared for a moment, then pushed further. "I need to see another form of ID." James raised an eyebrow. "What for? This is the first time I've ever been asked that." Karen replied flatly, "Well, according to bank rules, I have the right to ask if I suspect any suspicious activity. Have you ever been treated like a criminal just for looking a certain way? What would you do if you were in James's shoes?" If you believe no one should be treated differently because of how they look, hit that like button and subscribe to Story Arc. And let us know in the comments, where are you watching from? James leaned back slightly, watching her. Suspicious activity, but instead of arguing, he reached back into his bag. "You know what? Never mind. This is my college ID. That should work." Karen stared down at the college ID like it was a prank. Her eyes squinted, then she scoffed. "Stanford? You honestly expect me to believe you went to Stanford? This ID looks fake. I'm going to need to see a passport or something more official." James was starting to lose patience now. He kept his voice calm but firm. "Why would I carry a passport to the bank?" Karen's face twisted like he just insulted her. "Oh, you want to be a smart guy?" she snapped. Then she turned and called out, raising her voice across the floor, "Stella, can you come in here, please?" Moments later, another white woman entered the room, this one wearing a blouse and glasses. Stella walked up to the desk, clearly confused. Karen didn't waste time. She held up the Stanford ID and asked, "Does this look real to you?" Stella leaned in, took one look, then nodded. Uh, yeah, that's definitely real." Karen's smirk vanished instantly. Her mouth tightened as she muttered, "Okay, thanks." Without another word, Stella walked out. Karen turned back toward James and said coldly, "I need to count this." She began feeding the stack of bills into the machine. James sat back, keeping his cool. Then he reached into his bag again and pulled out something else. "Oh, I'd like to deposit this too," he said, sliding a check across the counter. Karen glanced down at the paper and froze. Her entire face changed. $20,000, she said, voice rising. "Seriously, what are you doing with this kind of money?" James looked her square in the eye. "It's not any of your business." She picked up the check and read the name printed across the top. That's when her jaw locked. "This is from J. Miller Capital," she muttered. "You actually expect me to believe you're employed there? This is a fraudulent check, isn't it?" But James didn't so much as blink. You're more than welcome to call the company and confirm yourself. Have you ever had someone look you in the face and try to tear you down just because they couldn't imagine you being successful? If you believe success has no skin color, go ahead and like this video and subscribe to Story Arc for more true stories like this one. Karen, meanwhile, leaned over the desk and said with disgust, "Oh, please. You probably don't even have a real job. Why don't I call security instead?" James finally stood up. His voice was calm but firm. "You know what? I'm done with this. Just hand over my cash and check so I can get out of here." As James stood up and asked for his cash and check back, Karen's face twisted with defiance. She didn't hand him anything. Instead, she reached under the counter and hit a button. "Security," she shouted. Within seconds, a tall, muscular black security guard walked through the door. His presence filled the room, but his tone was professional. "Is everything okay?" he asked, glancing between the two of them. Karen pointed straight at James, her voice loud and dramatic. No, it's not. This man handed me a fake ID, lied about where he works, and now he's trying to cash a fraudulent check. James didn't even flinch. More like she's profiling and making assumptions about me, when all I'm doing is trying to complete a basic transaction. Karen rolled her eyes hard and then raised her voice loud enough for nearby customers to hear. You people are so typical, always using race as your get out of jail free card. I know a crook when I see one. The room went quiet. James looked her dead in the eyes and said, Everything you just said couldn't be further from the truth. You claimed I didn't go to college, but not only did I attend one of the top universities in the country, I graduated at the top of my class. After that, I launched my own company, and over the years, it grew into one of the most successful financial institutions in the entire city. Then he added firmly, The point is, never judge a book by its cover, because I'm not just an employee at J. Miller Capital, I'm the CEO. Karen stared at him for a second, then burst out laughing, loud and mocking. You expect us to believe that? She turned toward the security guard. Get him out of here. You can tell he's a liar. But instead of moving, the security guard raised an eyebrow and looked at her. What if he's telling the truth? Maybe you should call the number on the check just to be sure. Karen hesitated, clearly not expecting that. But after a pause, she said, Okay, fine. She picked up the phone on her desk, dialed the number on the check, and said, Hello, this is Karen calling from Global City Bank. I have an individual here attempting to cash what appears to be a fraudulent check. Could you connect me to the owner, please? Thanks. Then, just seconds after Karen finished speaking, James's phone started ringing loudly. He slowly pulled it out, showed her the screen, and answered it. You see, he said calmly, you're calling me. Have you ever seen the moment when someone's entire world flips because of their own ignorance? The moment James answered his ringing phone and said, You see, you're calling me, Karen froze like a statue. Her hand slowly lowered from the desk. I don't understand, she muttered, eyes bouncing between the phone in her hand and the one in his. But she didn't get time to process it, because right then, the bank's branch manager walked in. A middle-aged white man in a blue suit stepped into the room, looked around, and said with a smile, Mr. Miller. James turned and greeted him calmly. Stephen, good to see you. Karen blinked rapidly. Her voice came out in a whisper. Sir, you know this guy? Stephen's smile vanished. He looked at her sharply and said, Yes, this is James Miller, owner of J. Miller Capital, our biggest client. Karen's jaw nearly hit the floor. This guy is our biggest client? Stephen didn't even look at her. Yes. Then, finally noticing the tense atmosphere, Stephen's eyes shifted to the security guard and back to James. Is everything all right here? James shook his head slowly. No, Stephen. Everything is not okay. You see, Karen here just stereotyped me because of the way I looked. Stephen turned to Karen, stunned. You what? Karen raised her hands weakly, already flustered. I mean, can you blame me? Just look at him. But that was all Stephen needed to hear. His expression hardened. You should know better than to ever judge a book by its cover. Then he turned back to James with sincerity in his voice. Mr. Miller, I am so sorry. I assure you this will never happen again, because Karen here is fired. Karen's mouth dropped open. What? Fired? No, you can't do that. But Stephen was done. I just did. We've had complaints before about you racially profiling customers. I should have acted sooner. He turned to the security guard. Make sure she gets all her things. Karen stood frozen as the guard calmly gestured for her to collect her belongings. Then Stephen turned back to James. Mr. Miller, I'd love to assist you personally in my private office. Please follow me. Have you ever witnessed someone try to tear another person down only to get exposed by the truth? If you believe respect should never depend on appearance, like this video and subscribe to Story Arc for more stories that reveal what happens when prejudice meets power. And just like that, the man she tried to humiliate walked past her with his head held high, straight into the VIP office she never knew existed. The story may be over for Karen, but the lesson that lives on.